When my daughter showed me the messages on her mom's tablet, I knew the betrayal ran deeper than I feared. But what my wife didn't know was that I'd already started gathering evidence. This wasn't just infidelity. It was war, and I was ready to win. The scent of chlorine hung in the warm afternoon air, mingling with the sharp rhythm of splashing water as Logan Pierce observed the swimming pool with a quiet intensity. His daughter, Clara, glided through the lanes with graceful precision, her butterfly stroke almost textbook perfect. At just 11, her commitment and drive were already pushing her into the realm of serious competitive swimming. Logan, once a collegiate swimmer himself, noted the slight hitch in her left shoulder rotation, but chose to let it slide for now.
Pride uitweg de critique.
As the coach offered gentle corrections from the poolside, Logan's phone buzzed against his thigh. A message lit up the screen from Ruby, his wife. Emergency meeting with Don about the Brentwood deal. Won't make it. Don't wait up. Logan deleted the message without replying. It was the third missed practice that week. He scanned the pool, glad Clara hadn't noticed her mother's absence. Again. That evening, Logan returned to Novorich Pediatric Therapy, his small but respected clinic nestled in a leafy suburb of Brookline. He worked patiently with Marcus, a 6-year-old recovering from a serious car accident. The boy's tentative steps were shaky but promising. Logan's encouragement was steady, his hands firm and reassuring. Nearby, Marcus's mother clutched her handbag, tears brimming in her eyes, whispering silent prayers as her son moved forward. Just as Logan was wrapping up the session, Lila Moreno, his clinic manager, appeared in the doorway, holding a printed document. Corporate sent another follow-up, she said quietly. They're getting aggressive. He took the paper from her, reading the latest proposal from the healthcare conglomerate trying to acquire Novorich. The terms were laced with corporate polish but reeked of one thing: control. They threatened to open a rival clinic 2 blocks away if Logan didn't sell. The plan was clear: mass-produced care, 15-minute sessions, standard treatment scripts. It was everything he had fought against in his career. Logan exhaled slowly and set the paper aside. They'll turn this place into a conveyor belt, he muttered. They're offering serious money, Lila pointed out carefully. Money isn't the measure of care, he said, his eyes drifting to the framed photos on his office wall. Patients smiling, thank you notes pinned beside them. We both know what happens to kids like Marcus under corporate policy. Before she could respond, Logan's phone vibrated again. A message from Clara. Dad, I qualified for regionals. Where's Mom? He felt something in his chest contract. Ruby had promised to be there. He'd reminded her that morning twice. She missed it, Lila asked, reading the shift in his posture. Logan nodded, jaw tightening. She said there was another meeting. With Don. Lila hesitated, then chose her words with care. You know people talk. At the firm. About Ruby. And Don. Logan's eyes lifted. What kind of talk? She paused. Closed doors. Late nights. The way he looks at her. The way she lets him. A few days later, Lila walked out of a client lunch early and noticed a familiar red sedan parked outside the Westlake Hotel. Ruby's. It was mid-afternoon on a weekday, a time she was supposedly in a board meeting. The sight made Lila's stomach twist. She snapped a photo, hand trembling slightly. She had known Logan for years, since college, in fact. She'd watched him build Novorich from a rented room with one treatment table and a beat-up filing cabinet. He had poured his entire soul into that clinic, into his family. He didn't deserve this. Later that week, Clara came into Logan's office after school, still in her uniform, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She dropped into the chair opposite his desk and shared what she'd seen that day. Her mother and Uncle Don having lunch alone at Castellano's, a high-end restaurant across town. Clara had passed by on her way to the library and noticed something strange. Her mother looked startled, not just surprised but caught off guard. She said it was work, Clara had added. But it didn't look like work, Dad. That night, while Clara slept, Logan sat in his home office reviewing credit card statements. Hotel stays.
Boutique Purchase.
all on days he'd been at the clinic late. A sense of clarity began to take shape, not born from anger but necessity. Lila messaged him around midnight. "Check your email. You'll want to see this." Logan opened the attachment. It was grainy security footage from the office building, Ruby entering Don's office late at night, leaving hours later, disheveled, his tie loose, her blouse wrinkled. Logan's hands didn't tremble. His voice was calm when he called Margot Lane, his lawyer, the next morning. The house was quiet that Sunday afternoon, the kind of silence that feels deliberate. Logan Pierce sat at his desk, folders spread out before him like weapons lined for battle. Statements, printouts, photo evidence, all of it neatly stacked. It wasn't rage that fueled him now. It was precision, strategy. He had spoken to his lawyer, Margot Lane, earlier that morning. She didn't waste time on platitudes. After viewing the video footage and statements, her instructions were clear. Document everything. Every transaction. Every inconsistency. Every lie. The final push came not from Logan's investigation, but from Clara herself. It was a Thursday evening when she entered the study, her face pale, an iPad clutched to her chest. She sat across from her father, clearly disturbed, and placed the device on the desk. "I borrowed Mom's iPad for a project," she said quietly. And these started popping up. Logan tapped the screen. Messages flooded the interface. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Meeting today's going to be torture without your touch. Thursday night again? Logan's working late." They were signed simply, D. Logan didn't ask Clara how much she had read. The hurt in her eyes told him enough. He took screenshots, saved them to a secured folder, and handed the iPad back with a soft thank you. Then he walked to the kitchen, poured Clara a glass of juice, and sat beside her in silence. She didn't cry. Neither did he. That night, while Clara stayed over at a friend's house, Logan confronted Ruby. She had returned home late again, her excuse already prepared. But this time, he didn't let her deflect. He showed her the photos, the transaction history, and finally, the security footage. Ruby's expression crumbled, then hardened. "You've been spying on me?" she snapped. "No," Logan replied, voice level. "You've simply stopped hiding." She called it a mistake. One mistake. A slip. But Logan had evidence of more than a dozen hotel stays, restaurant bills, and late-night visits, all within 2 months. She accused him of being controlling, too focused on his clinic. She even threw his charity work back in his face. "You play savior to those kids like it makes you a hero," she had spat. "While I build a real career." That phrase stuck with him. The next day brought another blow, but this time from someone he once considered a friend. Wade Miller, a close companion of 15 years, requested to meet. Over coffee, Wade admitted that he had known about the affair for months. He had seen Ruby and Don Harper together, heard whispers at Sterling Hart, and chose silence. "I thought I was protecting you," Wade claimed, eyes downcast. Logan simply nodded. "You weren't." When he left the cafe, Logan began the process of shutting down every remaining remnant of that old trust. Phone numbers, contacts, shared passwords. It all went into digital oblivion. He wasn't just severing ties, he was securing his ground. Meanwhile, Lila Moreno compiled a detailed timeline of Ruby's absences from family obligations. Each missed swim meet, every skipped parent-teacher meeting, unreplied school emails. Coach Mira Halden sent over a full log of Clara's swimming records and practice attendance. Ruby's presence was almost non-existent. Dr. Camille Rhodes, a child psychologist at a nearby clinic, began sessions with Clara. Her initial assessments were guarded but honest. Clara was experiencing symptoms of emotional neglect, not from lack of resources, but from consistent absence and broken expectations. "We'll document everything," Dr. Rhodes assured Logan. "This isn't about blame. It's about clarity for the court." At the same time, Talia Noor, the wife of Don Harper, reached out. She had received her own confirmation, hotel receipts, expense account anomalies, and emails that blurred professional boundaries. She had no interest in emotional reconciliation. She wanted facts and justice. Logan, Talia, and Margot formed a quiet alliance. Between them, they had the professional records, financial proof, and enough first-hand testimony to initiate formal legal proceedings, both personal and corporate. It wasn't revenge that fueled Logan now. It was preservation of his daughter's well-being, of his clinic's values, of the life he had built with care and discipline. By the end of that week, every step was documented, every lie accounted for. Ruby had crossed lines that were no longer deniable, and soon, she'd discover that those lines weren't just personal. They were legal. By the following Monday, Logan Pierce had shifted entirely into strategy mode. His emotions, pain, betrayal, disappointment, had been filed away into quiet compartments, replaced with order, caution, and resolve. He didn't pace or rant. Instead, he moved methodically, assembling the elements of something much bigger than a reaction. It was a reckoning. Margot Lane began building the legal framework. Every receipt, message, and surveillance video had been scanned, cataloged, and filed under 3 separate legal categories: marital misconduct, parental neglect, and workplace ethics violations. The scale of what Ruby and Don Harper had done was no longer just a family matter, it was systemic. Logan's partnership with Talia Noor, Don's wife, proved critical. Talia was sharp, focused, and, like Logan, driven by a deep sense of justice. She had access to archived HR files, expense reports, and emails buried within Sterling Hart's internal system. Hidden payments, real estate irregularities, client meetings that never happened. Ruby had become a tool in Don's larger scheme of manipulating valuations and masking internal fraud. This wasn't just an affair, Talia said during one of their confidential meetings. She helped him launder credibility. At Novareach, Logan briefed Lila Moreno on their next steps. The clinic security system was upgraded, now covering every entry point with remote access, audio-video capture, and cloud backup. Nothing would be left to interpretation. After the incident with Ivy Kessler, Ruby's mother, bursting into the house and yelling threats about taking Clara away, Logan understood the value of documentation. That altercation was now saved in HD with timestamps and backup copies stored securely. Clara, meanwhile, continued her sessions with Dr. Camille Rhodes. The reports were sobering but precise. Clara felt abandoned, replaced. She wasn't confused about what was happening. She understood it too well for her age. She was angry, but her anger was focused, and she clung to the presence of her father like an anchor. Dr. Rhodes recommended the sessions continue weekly and assured Logan that every documented emotional effect would become part of the custody hearing. In the midst of this emotional storm, Logan never missed a practice, a school event, or a meal with his daughter. His planner was filled not with meetings, but with tutoring appointments, swim meet reminders, lunchbox notes, and homework help. He didn't say much to Clara about what was happening behind the scenes. He just showed up. Again and again. His financial advisor helped reposition assets. Legally, fairly, but with protection in mind. Half the joint funds were placed into controlled trusts. Personal accounts were segmented. Legal boundaries established. When Ruby realized what was happening, her calls turned frantic. She accused him of manipulation. He didn't respond. Meanwhile, Margot built a parallel case. Professional misconduct. Using Talia's records and internal whistleblower statements, they uncovered patterns. 2 previous affairs Don had buried with NDAs, severance packages paid from company funds, and a string of ethical breaches disguised as promotions. They weren't working alone. Coach Mira Halden, Clara's swim coach, reached out to Lila with something unexpected. A detailed log of every swim meet Ruby had missed. Alongside emails she had ignored, excuses she had made, Mira offered to testify. "I've seen Clara waiting," she said simply. "It matters." At home, Logan recorded everything. Each interaction with Ruby, every request she twisted or denied, each visit she canceled. Her tactics became predictable: offer, retract, then claim Logan had misunderstood. Gaslighting. But this time he recorded it all. I told you I was picking up Clara Friday, she'd claim. No, you said next week. It's in the message. Logan would reply, screenshots ready. The manipulation no longer worked. The control she once wielded faded. And when Ivy Kessler returned, attempting to take Clara out shopping without consent, the new security system captured every word of her belligerent rant. You don't get to tell me what to do, she hissed. You're being recorded, Logan said calmly. You may want to consider your tone. She stormed out. He uploaded the footage to Margot's shared drive. And then came the invitation. Elegant cardstock. Embossed lettering. Ruby's 37th birthday. A celebration at the Loom, the city's most exclusive hotel. The guest list was stacked with executives, board members, real estate partners, and socialites. She's going to spin the narrative, Talia warned. Make herself the victim. Paint you as the absent husband. Let her, Logan replied. We'll respond with facts. Margot, Talia, Lila, and Logan reviewed every element of their plan. Process servers were briefed. Evidence packets prepared. HR, family court, and the real estate board had scheduled receipt of their official files. Everything was ready, documents, witnesses, footage, statements. You know this can't be undone, Lila said the night before the event. Once this starts, it won't stop. Logan looked out the window where Clara was asleep, curled on the couch in her team hoodie. She'd chosen her side with quiet certainty. Good, he said, because it's time. The chandeliers inside the Loom's grand ballroom glistened like frozen lightning, casting a golden glow on the polished marble floor. Velvet-draped tables shimmered under the light, and crystal glasses clinked rhythmically as guests toasted the hostess. Ruby Allen, dressed in a designer gown, floated from group to group with the grace of someone performing a role she had rehearsed many times. Beside her, Don Harper stood with the air of a man who believed he had already won. His hand hovered near Ruby's lower back, proprietary but casual. They exchanged knowing glances, presenting themselves as the ultimate power couple, charming, composed, untouchable. Across the city, in a small hotel conference room converted into a makeshift operations hub, Logan Pierce, Talia Noor, Margot Lane, and Lila Moreno prepared for execution. A tablet streamed the ballroom's interior feed from a hidden camera. Everything was in place. Process servers disguised as catering staff, delivery personnel, and venue assistants. Evidence packets were ready, color-coded by recipient, HR, the real estate board, family court, and internal compliance officers. Talia's jaw tightened as she watched her husband raise a toast beside Ruby's mother, Ivy Kessler, who addressed the crowd with artificial warmth. Ivy spoke of sacrifice, devotion, and the strength Ruby had shown in the face of emotional abandonment. Guests nodded sympathetically. Some clapped. A few even wiped away stage tears. Logan didn't blink. He had heard enough. On cue, he and Talia entered the ballroom with quiet resolve. He wore a tailored black suit. Talia moved like a woman with nothing to lose and everything to reveal. Their entrance was silent, but the tension spread instantly. Ruby's champagne flute paused midair, her smile faltering. The process servers dispersed like a perfectly timed choreography. One approached Ruby. Another delivered documents to Dawn. Additional servers moved through the crowd, discreetly placing evidence folders into the hands of board members, compliance officers, and the mediator from family court. Every interaction was calm, legal, and recorded. Confusion rippled. Conversations stopped. Phones emerged as guests began filming the disturbance. Ruby's voice cracked first. She demanded to know what was happening, eyes darting to Dawn, then to Ivy, who was already glowering. Margot stepped forward and identified the documents. Divorce papers, a custody suit, workplace ethics violations, financial misconduct documentation, and video evidence. Ruby's face drained of color. Don tried to intervene, raising his voice, but Margot's team was prepared. Calm voices delivered every document. No one shouted. No one ran. The damage was already done. One of the HR executives reviewed a page mid-party. Another board member scrolled through email logs and flagged payments marked as client development that corresponded with hotel stays. A third guest whispered to the woman beside him while watching Don's expression crumble. Ruby attempted a public defense. She called Logan vindictive, accused him of attacking her in front of friends, of shaming her without reason. But as witnesses opened envelopes and began reading, her words lost weight. Video screenshots, screens of messages, bank statements, testimonies. Talia stood still as her husband attempted to cast blame on her mental health, her jealousy. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Margot quietly informed Don of the upcoming investigation into financial irregularities. His face turned ashen. His voice, once loud, dropped to a near whisper. Ivy tried to regain control, demanding the disruption end immediately. She shouted about Ruby's suffering, about her daughter's strength. Logan didn't answer. Instead, he let the documents do the speaking. He turned to the mediator, who nodded. She had seen enough. By the next day, videos from the party had gone viral. Footage of Don threatening legal retaliation, of Ruby's outburst, of Ivy's emotional meltdown, and more importantly, of the documents themselves, reviewed in real time by stunned guests. Within 48 hours, Sterling Hart's HR team suspended Don pending investigation. Ruby was forced to step down from her leadership role. Ivy released a public statement, which only further embarrassed the family, claiming fabricated evidence and vindictive narratives. Meanwhile, Logan's clinic experienced a surge in public support. Former patients and families posted testimonials online, praising his dedication, his patience, his refusal to compromise quality for profit. Donations increased. Waiting lists grew longer. In court, the custody battle began. Evidence poured in: Clara's therapist reports, logs of parental attendance, school records, and personal testimonies. Ivy's threats, captured on video, were played in full. So were Ruby's attempts to manipulate visitation dates. Dr. Camille Rhodes testified clearly. Clara had suffered emotional abandonment from her mother. Her trust had been fractured by repeated broken promises and the discovery of infidelity. Her resilience, Dr. Rhodes said, was due largely to Logan's consistent emotional presence. Even Wade Miller, called as a reluctant witness, admitted under oath that he had known about the affair. His statement backfired, painting Ruby and Don's actions as long-standing and deliberate. The judge, unmoved by Ivy's performance, ruled decisively in Logan's favor. Full custody awarded, with supervised visitation only after Ruby completed parenting and therapy programs. Logan's first act after the hearing was simple. He took Clara for ice cream. She didn't talk much that day, but as she hugged him tightly and smiled softly, he knew the silence meant more than words. At the state swim championship a month later, Clara hit the wall first, breaking her personal best. Logan and Lila stood and clapped, proud, whole, and free. Don's firing made headlines. Ruby's demotion sent shockwaves through real estate circles. Ivy stopped showing up unannounced. Her threats, once sharp and loud, fell silent. And Logan, the man they thought would stay quiet, had shown exactly what strength looked like. Measured, deliberate, and relentless. 5 years later, a soft spring wind moved through the courtyard of the Novorich Pediatric Center, now greatly expanded and thriving. Children's laughter blended with birdsong as they participated in a therapeutic gardening session designed to develop coordination and fine motor skills. Raised garden beds, winding pebble paths, and a small sensory fountain transformed the space into a sanctuary of healing. Inside the glass-walled office overlooking the garden, Lila Moreno watched as Logan Pierce knelt beside a young boy learning to balance on one foot among the soil beds. Even now, after everything, Logan remained unchanged in the most essential ways. Present, steady, patient. 5 years of peace hadn't dulled his dedication. If anything, it had sharpened his focus. From behind Lila, a familiar voice spoke. Clara, now 16 and fresh from swim practice, entered the room in her school tracksuit. She had grown into a confident young woman, recently accepted to Westminster University on a competitive athletic scholarship. "He's doing that thing again," she said with a knowing smirk. Lila smiled, not needing clarification. Helping the kids who remind him of you at that age? Clara nodded. He always had a soft spot for the stubborn ones. Framed photographs lined the office walls, milestones frozen in time. Clara's championship medals. The small wedding ceremony where she had stood beside her father as maid of honor. Joint family vacations. The ribbon cutting of Novarich's new therapy wing. A collaborative project with Talia, Noor's pediatric clinic. That partnership had become a regional model for ethical pediatric healthcare. Several major publications had featured the story. What had begun as personal defense had evolved into a platform for reform, built not on retaliation but on values. Dr. Camille Rhodes, Clara's former therapist, still contributed to the clinic's mental health program. In quarterly reviews, she noted reduced relapse rates and increased patient satisfaction across the board. Margot Lane, now general counsel for both clinics, helped enforce the rigorous ethical code they had established. Talia entered the office holding coffee, her engagement ring catching the sunlight. She had found happiness too, eventually rebuilding her life with someone who understood the demands of caregiving professions. Quarterlies look strong, she said, placing the reports on Logan's desk. We're outperforming every private provider in the state. Success through integrity, Lila recited quietly, the unofficial motto that had become something much more. Outside, Logan finally returned from the garden. His sleeves dusty and his shoes speckled with soil. We're thinking of expanding the sensory garden, he said, brushing off his hands. It's become the kids' favorite part of therapy. They all agreed. The physical changes in the clinic mirrored the emotional transformation of their lives. The shadows that once followed them, infidelity, betrayal, public humiliation, had faded. And the others, Ruby Allen, once so calculating and confident, now lived in near anonymity. Her attempt to rebuild her reputation through carefully crafted apologies on social media had backfired. The comments under her posts were often unkind, referencing her past choices. The professional world she once dominated had turned cold. Smaller firms hired her for short-term roles, but her name carried too much weight, and not the good kind. Visitation rights had quietly expired. Clara had made her choice long ago. She hadn't seen or spoken to her mother in over 2 years. Every birthday card Ruby sent was rerouted, donated unopened to the local children's hospital. Don Harper, stripped of his licenses and bankrupted by lawsuits, had tried to resurface in another state. The internet had long memory, and every attempt at professional reinvention collapsed under the weight of search results. The last they heard, he was living abroad, barely keeping work. Ivy Kessler, unable to accept her reduced access to Clara, had once again attempted contact, this time via social media. The renewed restraining order was swift and final. Her blog, filled with bitter essays on parental alienation, garnered no readership beyond a few sympathetic comments from fringe forums. One afternoon, Clara casually mentioned seeing Wade Miller at a local cafe. He had tried to make small talk. She politely declined. He asked how Mom was doing, she later told Logan. I said I already have all the parents I need. Lila, who had grown into her role not just as Logan's colleague, but as his partner and wife, was now Clara's true maternal figure. Their bond wasn't forced, it was built, slowly and honestly, day by day. That evening, their home buzzed with life. Children from the clinic came with their parents for a spring gathering. Talia's kids mingled easily with Clara's swim team. A therapist gave a short speech about the clinic's growth. Logan grilled vegetables while Lila arranged flowers. Clara helped a small boy learn how to kick properly in a kiddie pool. Package arrived mid-party. It was from Ruby, an expensive gift, another letter about reconciliation. Clara didn't hesitate. Let's donate it, she said. Logan nodded. Later, under the garden lights, Clara asked if they could teach Lila how to surf during their summer trip to the coast. Logan looked at his daughter, then at his wife and smiled. Absolutely. The past no longer held them. What remained were roots, deep and stable, nourished by storms weathered and choices made. Victory had not come through revenge. It had come through patience, ethics, and love. And in the quiet laughter that filled the air as Clara splashed water onto Lila, Logan understood the truth. Some battles are worth everything, not for destruction, but for protection, for healing, for legacy.